Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of V Next. I am your host, Mike Walker, and today we're going to get into the future of remote work. Yes, this is you might think it's kind of a part two, maybe to what we've already done. But today, you're not just going to hear me ramble on about this stuff. We're going to talk to a collaboration expert. And so we've got Michel, who is with the Microsoft Teams team. Yeah. He's going to come on and we're going to talk about not only the Microsoft collaboration tools and some of the recent announcements, but really the more important part about all of this, guys, is us. We're still very much analog, trying to live in a digital world. And so we're going to jump into uh, day-to-day tips. How does someone like Michel, who's a collaboration expert, how does he manage his day on a day-to-day basis? What are some practical tips and tricks on how to think about all this? And we're going to dive into also the human dynamic on what does the future of collaboration in communities look like as well. And so it's going to be super, super exciting. I really enjoyed my conversation with Michel. He is a super smart guy, but also very, very down to earth. So I think you're really going to enjoy the conversation. So, like with all of our episodes, all the show notes and links will be provided on vnextpod.com. That's vnextpod.com. All right, guys, let's get into it. Hello, Michelle. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, so it's an ever changing world, and we've been talking a lot about the future of work and what it could mean, looking into our crystal balls, and you've been doing a lot of work in this space, and it'd be good to start off with a little bit about you. Do you want to maybe give us an overview of who you are, your role at Microsoft, and some of the things you're working on?
Sure. So my name is Michel Bowman. The official title within Microsoft is Territory Channel Manager for Modern Work. What's in a name, right? So basically, the role is I try to spot what the opportunities are in the market. I look at customer trends, and as Microsoft, we do most of our sales through our partner network. So then I try to combine both the partner ecosystem and the customer ecosystem, bring those two worlds together to ensure that the partners are building the right solutions for our customers. That's my main priority. So my focus is all on Teams, meetings, calling, and devices. And I think that's all that has been top of mind for the past, what is it now, 6, 7 months already,
Yeah.
since we were hit by the epidemic, or the pandemic. Yeah, that's all that's been on top of my mind for the past months.
And I believe you've been at Microsoft for a while. I've been at Microsoft for a while. At least I'm a boomeranger. At least
Right.
cumulatively, I guess. But as far as the products that I've observed over the years, I haven't seen quite the dynamic of what we're doing with Microsoft Teams with any other product. I mean, just the level of change and agileness around teams and not only catching up with the market, but also innovating around it. Because, as Microsoft, we've always been good at catching up. But
Right.
as far as out innovating, that's something unique, I think, at least. What do you think, Michelle?
I agree. I think we saw some of it with the service lineup. Right? So the stuff that we're doing now with Surface Duo is definitely a step forward, I think, in the direction of what devices might look like in the future. But kudos to the Teams team and the developers there who are doing an amazing job. Where we first prioritize security, right? That should always be the main priority. So I think in the first few months we were indeed playing catch up um, against some of the more point solutions. Now I agree that it's all about innovation. I think the base is super solid with the 7 by 7 grid, which everybody was asking for, with the breakout rooms, which are now going to be generally available in October. But I think also if you look at the new innovations with Together Mode, which I think is super exciting, and we just had Microsoft Ignite, where we announced a bunch of stuff, and I'm sure we'll get into it
Yeah.
around well-being. That is more about people and not so much about technology. That's what I like about the direction that Teams is going. Yes, the technology is there and all the features are cool, and we'll join them. I think we're taking it one step further, where it's more about people and less about the technology.
I couldn't agree more. And, on that thread, being about people, I'm curious, as a technologist working for Microsoft, focusing on collaboration tools through this pandemic, what's your world look like on a day to day basis?
I'm a father of four, right? So I think my wife and I had all kinds of roles for the past 6 months. We were the teacher, the tutor, the babysitter. Although I'm not sure if I could use the word as a father because I am the father of the household,
Right.
right? And then at the same time, I I have my role in Microsoft. I try to be a first responder because. Uh, Understandably, people were just panicking in those first 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
We've seen so many companies that always had said we can never work remotely. It just doesn't fit our culture or our company. And then all of a sudden, from one day to the other, they had to go through this massive cultural change. I just try to be the first responder there. So I think it was a bunch of different roles, both personal and professional, that really made a big impact on the way that I've been living for the past 6 months. For me now, it's always working from home. There is a soft opening in the Dutch subsidiary, so I'm from the Netherlands. There is a soft opening in the Dutch subsidiary of Microsoft, so we're allowed to come into the office, but only if we have a good reason. And I think the maximum amount of people that are welcome in the building is about 50, so it's not that many. Uh, I don't really go there. I do think, and again, I'm sure we'll get into it, that the whole role and function of the office is changing rapidly. But it's for sure that we've seen a year of digital transformation in each month. I think we've seen 6 years of progress when it comes to technology and digital transformation within companies in these past 6 months.
Yeah, it's amazing. And every guest that I've had on over the past, I want to say, 4 or 5 months, they've said the same thing. They've said, the pandemic hasn't slowed things down, it's rapidly accelerated their digital transformation. And I like what you said, and you gave a great segue into what we want to talk about next, which is what does the future look like? And obviously, us as technology professionals, historically, we've never really been good at this. Um,
Mhm.
but let's pretend like we're good at it, and we do see some leading indicators here. We see that not only Microsoft and doing soft openings. I mean, the Redmond headquarters campus is not open, and
Nope.
that's not going to open for quite some time. But you've got big companies like Twitter saying, "Hey, you guys could just work remotely forever. I don't care."
Hmm. Hmm.
Facebook recently did an announcement. IBM made an announcement. So there's many companies that are saying we've got to rethink how we think about work and
Yeah.
more specifically where we work. And so in your mind, as a person that is on the forefront of the communications technologies and
Hmm.
working with customers, what's in your crystal ball? What do you see? Let's split it out here. Let's split it out from near term over the next kind of year, and then let's think about this from a longer term perspective, maybe 2 to 5 years out.
Yeah, I think that that last part is super difficult. Who expected this, right? And the way that technology is moving now, it's super fast.
Yeah.
So I think looking 5 years ahead can be challenging, but it's fun to have a conversation around it. I think short term, I think we're kind of depending on where this is going with COVID. Um, we can we had to really adjust. A lot of companies had to adjust from 0% virtual to 100% virtual, and now we have to readjust to some hybrid form. Like you're saying, many
Right.
companies from small SMBs to big enterprises are now saying, this new world of work and working remotely isn't so bad after all, right? People,
Hmm.
managers are really moving from managing by having control to managing by having trust in people.
And I've
right?
had
Which
people that
brings
I've talked to that have said they don't want to go back. Not only will
right.
it work, but they're like, look, I prefer this mode, and I don't think I can look at the traditional office the same again.
I think the whole role of the office is drastically changing, right? So the office is now more a meeting point, just a place to meet other people, and not so much a place to work. So if you look at Microsoft in the Netherlands, we call it the new world of work, and we've been practicing this for I think about 11 years. So in Microsoft in the Netherlands, we can kind of determine when we work, where we work, and how we work. Right. So if I want to be in the office, it's perfectly fine. The big advantage for me, again, being a father of four, I get to take my kids to school every morning. I'm never stuck in traffic because I just look at the traffic. If there's a lot of traffic, I'm not going to the office yet
Right.
or wherever I need to be. And then I try to leave a little bit earlier so I can spend some time with the family. And then when the kids are in bed and my wife is binge watching Netflix, which I'm not really interested in, then I do my email, right? And that really works for us as a family.
Right.
I also think it's not so much about, we should definitely touch on work life balance. It's more about work life harmony, right? So, how do you, and I think that's where people are struggling, and we have done some research, but how do you create that harmony between work and the private life?
Yep.
Because it is showing now that over 30% of remote and first-time workers said that the pandemic has increased burnout at work, which I think is quite scary,
Hmm.
right? Um, and that's something, and
Yeah,
we have
I'm
a few
raising my
people
hand.
teams.
Yes, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, exactly, right? But it's happening, and it's super difficult. And if you look at the data, on average, people are spending between almost an hour in Germany and almost 2 hours more in Australia on Teams a day.
Yep.
So they log on earlier, they log off later. The risk there is if you're on back-to-back meetings that you're going to burn out really fast. And then another research is showing that when you're on these video calls, your brain starts to get real tired, and you see meeting fatigue after like 20 to 30 minutes.
Yep.
So I think it's crucial, super important that we look at well-being and stuff such as focus hours to implement in your day and really find this new harmony between work and life. And I
Yeah.
think if you look at, so the stress is different for because we have the first line workers
Yep.
and we have the remote workers.
I
And what
agree.
first line workers are really saying is that there's a lot of workload. That's their biggest issue. The remote workers are saying, hey, there's a lack of separation between work and life. So I think short term, we have to find a way to deal with meeting fatigue and the risk of burnout. The midterm, we're going to have to readjust to this hybrid world where we'll have some people that are in the office and we'll have some people that'll be remote, which is interesting in meetings. And then long term, I think it's difficult to say. I'd like to think that augmented reality is going to play a big role. I think what's happening there is super interesting. Around we do it with the HoloLens, but there's other competitors doing other stuff as well. I think augmented reality could be super interesting. So the difference between virtual and augmented is virtual is all computer, so you have your visor on and all you're seeing is the computer world. With augmented, it's a combination between computer and holograms and then the real world. I think it's super interesting if you could do meetings in these holographic worlds. I think that's going to be interesting. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, a
Yeah.
little bit more long term.
I agree. And obviously we're splitting hairs here, but the augmented and the virtual, and I'm super excited about more in the augmented world and in the mixed reality world where
Right.
I've got my home office and I've got IoT sensors everywhere. And you can't see behind this camera, but behind this camera, there is a wall that I've completely painted with whiteboard paint, and
Right.
so I've got one big whiteboard, and it would be great to be able to have, standing virtually next to me, my colleagues,
Yeah.
and I'm able to draw on the board because I've got a sensor in the pen, I've got a sensor in the board. And I mean, who knows? Maybe I'm not even writing on anything. Maybe it's just, through augmented reality, whatever it may be. But I
Hmm.
think you're right. I think, what this is going to open up is it's going to open up more meaningful experiences digitally. And what that means is not this two-dimensional view that we deal with every day, but
Mhm.
something much, much more interactive that's bringing us closer to the analog world, which we're trying to move away from. But I think it's we're going to see more of a blend in that analog world with the digital world.
I agree. I agree. And still, we have to crack this code on how do you find the work-life harmony.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a tricky one.
So you say harmony, and I really like that because balance. I haven't found the balance. Maybe it's just me, but I've been a remote worker for over a decade, and
Right.
um, it's very situational in my life. There's different events. My kids are at different ages as they grow up, and there's different demands. There's different rhythms of businesses that I've worked for, and
Mhm.
so trying to find a balance has always been extremely difficult for me. And I like the harmony concept that you're putting out into the universe here. Can you maybe expand upon that a little bit? Because I think it'd be beneficial to dig deeper on that.
Yeah, I actually got this from our CEO, Satya Nadella. He visited the Netherlands, I think a little over a year ago. Yeah, something like that. And I asked him the question, or somebody asked him the question, saying, "How do you deal with work-life balance?" And he mentioned this topic about harmony. Balance balance kind of feels like it always needs to be right,
Right.
but that's super difficult, right? There are times when I need to spend more time on work, and can have less attention at home. There are times when I need to fully focus on home and work has to move to the background.
Hmm.
And it's never in balance. It never is, right? I think it all comes down to communication, right? So we're recording this and it's almost 6 p.m. over here. So this is dinner time, right? Usually this is the time I'm downstairs spending time with the kids, helping the missus with dinner and all that stuff. Now I'm spending time recording here with you. We have become great communicators in the household to set expectations of what we have to do, to find that harmony and be okay with whatever's happening. And that makes it okay for sometimes the your personal life to move to the background a little bit, and then at other times it's all the way personal and less work.
Yep.
And we're lucky to work for a company in Microsoft where we are empowered to do stuff like this. And I realized that's more into culture,
Yep.
right? And I think we're making steps in the right direction, forced now, right? What you just mentioned about people having to go and use tools such as Microsoft Teams because that was basically the only way to communicate with their peers. I think we're going to make an extra leap forward when it comes to culture and the truly the definition of work and what work is and what it isn't. Right. So I think yeah, harmony for me is everything, and then having the right communication in the house and at work.
Yeah.
Feeling comfortable with saying no sometimes. I think that's fine as well. One
Yeah.
of the things that we implemented in our culture in Microsoft in the Netherlands is one that we call making conscious decisions. Right. So how often are you in a meeting? It's funny because my phone just started saying something to me. How often are you in a meeting where you're being distracted by your phone, which just happened to me, right? You're doing email, or you see somebody do an email, or they're on LinkedIn or wherever they are,
Yep.
right? Which isn't really fair to the people that are in a meeting. So if you're not seeing any added value of you being in a meeting, it's perfectly fine to say no. Just
Yep.
don't go, right? But if you commit to it, so if you make the conscious decision to go to a meeting, right, you're there fully 100% focused, not focusing on, not looking at anything else, not being distracted by anything else, but having 100% committed focus. I think that's key. And then also finding new small hacks to implement. My 60-minute meetings are no longer 60 minutes; they're 40 or 45. My half an hour meetings are no longer half an hour; they're 20 or 25 minutes.
Yep.
This leaves, if you look at the 1 hour meeting, which has been scaled back to 40 or 45, this leaves 5 minutes to end the meeting. It gives me 5 minutes to take a breather, have a drink, whatever you need to do, and then 5 minutes to fully prepare to go to the next meeting. which is really helping you deal with that meeting fatigue and having to be back to back in meeting. I think it's those small things, but they have to be embedded in a culture where it's perfectly fine to say, hey, I'm not going to be joining that meeting. If there's no clear agenda or I don't see how I can add value or take value from this meeting, it's perfectly fine to say no. Right? And I think that's something that we have to instill in companies as well.
No, I think that's brilliant, and a lot of these principles have been around for some time, and I'm sure you've used these. I know that my mentees, I'm very big on saying no,
Mhm.
because it's like you said, it's unfair if you're going to be checked out, but also you might not be the right person. So
Right?
say no, but have a solution, have an alternative for folks and say, you know what? It's not me. Really shouldn't be at this meeting, but Bob and Sally should be at this meeting. Or maybe
Right.
it shouldn't be a meeting at all. Maybe it should be a virtual workshop, or just an email communication. Hey, I think this could be much more effective if you just send out an email or a Teams message, whatever it may be. Uh,
Yep.
you know, so what it's doing is it's flipping it to be much more actionable. Now, in that vein, Michel, you're in the field. You are working with customers on these technologies on a day to day basis.
Hmm.
Would you be able to share maybe some examples of some of the customers you're working with that are sources of inspiration that are doing it right?
Right.
Do you have a few, even if you have to say, a company in the Netherlands in the manufacturing world does X, Y, and Z, even if
Hmm.
they remain anonymous? Do some examples come to mind for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the examples that inspires me a lot is the one of Tony Chocolonely. So Tony Chocolonely is they sell chocolate, right? And they don't call themselves a chocolate company. They call themselves an impact company that's making chocolate. Because what they stand for is 100% slave-free chocolate in the world. So
Hmm.
what they do is they go to these farmers in Africa who get paid really little because the supply chain is really complicated. And what they do is they pay a premium to these farmers on top of the money that they're already getting to earn a decent living and to really remove slavery from these chains, modern slavery from these chains, which I think is an awesome mission to have. I know they're doing some work already in the U.S. as well. Their chocolate bars are really interesting. So if you could check it out, Tony's Chocolonely is the name of the company. So what they do is they now leverage Teams. They stop communicating through email for one, and they're doing everything through Teams to communicate to their first line workers in the stores. So they have a couple of retail stores, and then they use Teams in all these different subsidiaries that they have. They have three in Europe and then two in the US and then one in Africa, right? To really communicate. What I like what they're doing is they are really building their culture around collaboration, which I think is and they're taking the extra mile with it as well.
Right.
So what they did is they bought a pigeon. If you've ever been to Amsterdam, everybody's always talking about the wooden shoes and the pigeons,
Yeah.
right? A pigeon that was already dead, by the way, and as just a form of emphasizing the change, they buried the pigeon, saying, "We're no longer sending emails. We're doing everything through Teams." Right? And they're doing all these kind of activities to promote working more remotely, to promote leveraging technologies. Not so much about Teams or whatever it is,
Right.
but leveraging technology to ensure that they meet their own KPIs, which is creating 100% slave-free chocolate in the world. So I think you have those examples. What I really like is the companies that are now showing a lot of resilience and agility.
Hmm.
Right? So companies that have there is a company that I work with quite a lot, and they hosted workshops. Their whole business model was around, they're called the Body Language Academy. Their whole business model was based on in person workshops. And they were doing really well. And then from one day to the other, COVID just destroyed their whole business model,
Right.
right? But and then the first week, 2 weeks, panic, and then the weeks after, they're showing so much resilience and agility that within 3 months they had created a full online course, which I
Mm,
think is just amazing. Of people thinking about, okay, how can we find new ways to still have a decent revenue stream. Same thing for artists, by the way. If you look at some of the artists that are out there, musicians, I'm impressed by how they are now leveraging social media to still find ways to get revenue
yep,
from stuff such as streams. Right, there are two artists in the hip hop and R&B space. They're called Timbaland and Swiss Beats,
yep,
major producers, and they've created this thing called Versus, where they celebrate talent and then doing versus battles between two artists, and you can just see their streams, their numbers skyrocketing
yep.
to make up for the money that they're now losing because they can't do any shows. I think that's some of the examples that I'm super impressed by. Just looking at new things
Yeah.
and not so much looking at all the old stuff that we were doing. And I think that's what's needed.
No, you're right, and the example of musicians is a great example. I've seen, whether it be mainstream bands, Metallica just came out with a new album, and they were partnering with the San Francisco Symphony and all that, and through some of their media tours. What was interesting when they were asked, so how do you guys rehearse? Are you guys recording music? And they're like, yeah, we're recording music.
Yeah.
Daily we get together and do a virtual session, and we've just changed our workflow. And in some cases, band members that didn't have as much as a say before, now it's much more democratic, and it's bringing a new element into what they produce. but
Mm-hmm.
but also, it's just fascinating to see also all these artists out there just doing new and interesting things, and
Yeah.
they are communicating perhaps better than they've ever communicated before during
Yeah.
this. And so you've got, the Green Day lead singer. He's going out and doing a bunch of covers of
Hmm.
different songs. And why? Just for the hell of it. Let's do this,
Yeah.
right?
Let's do it.
And so, I think that in a lot of ways, it's increased the visibility and increased the collaboration as well.
Yeah. Have you seen the stuff that the NBA is doing, the National Basketball Association,
Yeah.
with the virtual fan experience? So for those that haven't seen this, is you dial into a Teams meeting, you get into together mode. We'll touch on it, I think.
Yeah.
Get into together mode, and you're there in a fan section with 30 other fans. And there are about, I think, about 8 or 9 different sections. So you're there with 30 fans. You can talk amongst the fans. The players on the court can actually hear you. They can see you as well. So they've set up these big LED screens. They can see you as well. And then you have the fan experience where you can talk amongst each other, and then you have the stream for whatever television station is broadcasting the game. And that's so much fun. I was on the what game was it? Mavericks. I was in a Mavericks game. I'm a big basketball fan.
Yeah.
I was in the Mavericks game, and it's just so much fun to talk to other fans instead of just sitting behind my TV or behind my computer watching the game. I really like what they're doing. Same in Formula One.
Yep.
Right? So in Formula One, some of the teams are using teams live events to do tours through the pit lane and really talk about the mechanics behind the car. We're seeing new business models that are just popping up everywhere. You could do fan Q&A, meet and greets, all this kind of stuff you can do now through technology. I think that's the cool part about what's happening right now.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because this particular sport is deeply rooted in tradition or not, or if they're
Mm,
just completely behind the eight ball. But I'm a big fan of Major League Baseball,
right.
and a lot of the teams in Major League Baseball are actually going fairly old school, and you can send them a picture, and they'll create a cutout,
Oh,
a
yeah, I've
actually
seen that.
printed cutout in the
Yeah, I've
stands,
seen it. Yeah,
which on one side is interesting because you're always there,
right.
and you can say, hey, this is, go check out this seat, and in this and that.
Right.
But as a technologist, I want more of that together mode, like what you see in the NBA as well, to be much more dynamic and fluid. Uh, but hey, they're trying.
Hey, but I think Major League Baseball, what I like about baseball games, right? And unfortunately, I haven't been able to visit with my family, just with some colleagues because I think I saw a Toronto game. What I liked, what I saw in the stadiums is it's really an event to go to with your family. Right, so
Oh
it's
yeah,
a family event where you meet other families, and I think that's the big difference between what you're seeing in the NHL or in the NBA or soccer leagues or whatever. It's such a family event, and how cool would it be to create that family event? I'm talking to a customer right now that's doing classical music concerts,
hmm
and what they're trying to do is to create this VIP experience. What happens when people go to these concerts? It's always the same group of people that know each other and have this interaction. Now we can create virtual stands where you don't have the cutout, but you can actually see each other and talk to each other and enjoy the concert still without being able to be in the venue itself, which is always the best. Obviously,
yeah.
I'd rather be live in the stadium than sitting in a virtual stand. But for now, I think it's such a great thing. So I would love to see MLB doing the same thing where they can create this family experience, which I think is super great about what they're doing.
Yeah, and and to give credit where credit's due, the MLB has probably one of the best streaming apps that I've
Mm,
seen. They've done.
okay.
They were an early adopter of that technology, and they've done a phenomenal job. I've got, even though I don't live in the area for the team that I root for.
Hmm.
I can still have access to all their games on any
Right.
device that I want, which is super cool.
Yeah.
Um, so
That's what I like. That's what I like. Sorry to interrupt. That's
no,
what I
you're
like
great.
about the NBA. So being in Europe, it's difficult for me to visit NBA games, right?
Right?
I
Yeah.
have to be lucky to be normally our biggest events are around the summertime. So whenever I'm in the US, those are the times that I'm in the US. There's no season,
hmm
right? So I can't go watch anything. Luckily for me, the past 2 to 3 years, I was able to visit some summer league games that were in Vegas while we were in Vegas. But having all these fan experience are the best for me, so I can be watch every game, even though I do have to get up at 3 a.m. in the morning to watch them.
Well, I also, you might be picking the wrong clients. I mean, you need to go with ESPN. So actually, it's the Walt Disney Company. You need to really target the Walt Disney Company,
Mm.
and get on property and do an extended engagement and interact with the ESPN folks, and you're in.
Yeah.
Um, so we've talked a lot about other companies. We've talked a little bit about what to expect here over the coming months or maybe years. But transitioning into day to day, and it'd be interesting to find out from you because there's all these life hacks and work hacks out there that I think are really helping people be more productive and efficient through all of this. And I guess what I'd like to do is understand from you as the expert here in collaboration. What's in your toolkit? I'm sure Teams is part of it,
Yeah.
but what are some of the other things that you use on a day-to-day basis that are just vital for your success and productivity?
Right. Of course, it's really scoped around the Microsoft stack and all the stuff that we have. Uh, I try to have clear goals of what I'm trying to achieve first in the week. Right? So I leverage Planner, which is a tool where you can basically plan and manage projects, but I use it as my personal to-do list. So I've set it up with to-dos, which is a long list. And then every Monday morning or sometimes Friday afternoon, I do the vetting from this list and I move them into what I'm going to do next week, or if I'm doing it on Monday, that week. And then each morning, I take tasks from my weekly to-dos and put them in the daily to-dos. Right, so that gives me a solid idea of what I want to achieve during that day.
Yeah.
One thing that's important for me is, like I just talked about, is focus hours, right? So within my analytics, which is a tool within Office 365 where you can see some data on well-being, some on collaboration, some on after-hour works, some on your network. You can also leverage that Outlook is automatically scheduling focus hours for you. So if you would look on my calendar right now, I have 2 hours of focus time that are automatically blocked 2 weeks ahead every day on my calendar.
Right.
So that gives time for me to really do those tasks because the risk is you're constantly in back to back to back to back meetings. Right, so those are big to me. I block my lunches as well, so I want to ensure that I have a good lunch, and I usually with um, combine it with a walk if the
Hmm.
weather allows it, right, or just some form of relaxation. So I really, of course, I'm using technology. That's super important to me, but I really try to focus on the human aspect as well.
Michelle,
Well, we're now
you're putting me to shame. I'm jealous here.
why?
You've got your stuff way too together here. Yeah, I barely take lunches. I don't think I've taken a lunch in the past maybe. I mean, I can't even remember. That's how sad this is. Like at
Yeah,
least a week and a half, and it's just like, oh yeah, I've got my coffee. I've got a plethora of almonds and at least healthy stuff by my
yeah,
desk,
right.
but it's just like cranking through it, and that's not healthy.
That's how I found out the hard way on those first few weeks, right? Just sitting in my office all day long. And for me, it wasn't almonds, it was chocolate, right?
Oh yeah,
Just the, some
dangerous.
candy bars here and just too much sugar. And I would be in my office as soon as I had taken my kids to school and be back in my home office around 8:45, 9-ish. I would sit here until 5, eat or help prepare dinner, eat, shower the kids, take the kids to bed, and then work. I spent way too much time, and that went on for 2 weeks. And I was like, we can't go on like this because
Right.
you're gonna burn out really fast, right? So that was my wake up call to say, okay, I need to ensure that I schedule time to focus and schedule time to focus, schedule time to take breaks with the little life hack 45-minute meetings,
Yeah.
right? Just to even it can even be something as simple as just opening a window and stick your head out of the window and get some fresh air for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
right? That just relaxes your whole brain. What I still need to get better on is how do I end my day, right? So what we're now implementing in Microsoft Teams, and it should be available later this year, early next year, is a thing called well-being insights. So you get on your Teams menu, you get an insights app where you can see stuff such as how much time have you spent working on after hours, right? How have you been collaborating? Because collaboration obviously is a big thing, but you still need focus time as well. And what we'll also introduce is what we call virtual commute.
Mm,
Because not being able to commute now might seem like a great thing, and it is because it saves you a lot of hours. The downside of that is that I'm not sure how you usually commuted, but when I was in the car, I would either turn off my music completely, right, and just let my brain do whatever it wanted to do for
yeah.
half an hour while I was in the car driving from the office to home, or I would crank the music all the way up and
Right.
sing like I was on Metallica or Boyz II Men or whatever,
Yeah.
sing and just relax, right? And now, uh, because we don't have that commute, there's actually a downside to that,
Yeah.
right? And so what we're introducing in Microsoft Teams soon is this thing called virtual commute. And during your virtual commute, which is only 15 to 20 minutes, what you get is an overview of things that you've committed to during the day. So you can say in email or in Teams, "Hey, Mike, I'll send you the slides next week." Right?
Yeah.
And then the graph API is what it's called. Will grab that data and then offer it to you prior to the day that you've committed to it. Right?
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yep.
Right. So what this virtual commute does, it's showing you this saying, hey, Michel, if you've committed to Mike to deliver a PowerPoint which is due in 3 days, shall I put it on your to do? Yes or no? Please do so. Yes,
Yeah.
and it'll be in your to do. What it also does is it's going to offer you meditation. Right. So
Yeah.
studies are showing that meditation can fight burnout and stress during the workday, and we're collaborating with Headspace, which I think is one of the most used apps out there when it comes to meditation.
Yep.
We're collaborating with them to bring Headspace and meditation into the virtual commute, just to really shut down and create the difference between work and life. Uh, Maybe funny story, something that one of my peers does is he has this light in his office, and when he works, the light is on.
Hmm.
And as soon as he turns off the light, that is the end of his workday.
Oh wow.
So his brain, it's hard for me to believe, but it's working for him. So I think it's definitely worth something to try. Is that his brain is so used to, okay, the light is on, now I'm in work mode.
Right.
The light is off, I'm now in personal life mode. I think that's super interesting. If you can kind of trick your brain to do that, you can again create the difference between work and life.
Yeah, and I always find those small little tricks really, really insightful. And there are some wrinkles, though, right? And you described it, and I described it here when we started our conversation, which is our lives are dynamic, and
Yeah.
um, in a lot of ways, not having this fixed, rigid schedule is actually really good. At least I'll speak for myself. It's really good for me. It's really good to say, oh, well, my son's got a concert at 3 p.m. and I can just step away and have the freedom to be able to do that and log back on at, 9 p.m. after I put the kids to bed.
Yep.
That's an incredible amount of freedom. It's working within how I want to work, but also what I would love to see, uh, bec- because I'm not a morning person at all. I
Hmm.
mean,
Hmm.
I've given up that fight,
Right.
and maybe it's the scientific community has given me enough ammunition to say I'm done with it.
Right.
But I'm a night owl, and so
Right.
I'm sure that if there was some statistics and metrics on me that my managers and such saw, they'd be like, "What the heck is going on with Mike? He is, 2 in the morning, plowing through emails and this and that." But I'm at my prime at around 11 p.m. You
Yep.
know, most alert, and I even exercise in the evening. And so, I think that having these tricks for what works for you, but
Hmm.
also tailoring those tricks to situations. And so there are some hard and fast rules that I follow, being, because I've dealt with remote work for a very long time,
Right.
and I haven't, you wouldn't believe the number of miles on my car, how few miles are on my car, because I haven't driven anywhere outside to an airport in many, many years. But
Right.
there are certain rules like, you know, don't take your laptop into the bedroom. Um,
Yeah.
because I think one aspect here psychologically that we have to understand, whether it's if you're a morning person or a night owl, but also as human beings, we associate work with specific areas or events. So if I'm in
Right.
bed and I've got my laptop and I'm working, well, now my mind is starting to associate laying down in bed with work, and
Yep.
now I'm going to have sleeping problems.
Yep.
Likewise, I very rarely take my work outside of my office,
Hmm.
and that's by design, because
Yeah.
just like the example that you gave where that person had flipped off the light, essentially
Hmm.
I closed the door.
Yeah, that's what you're doing. Yeah, I like
Right.
that a lot. I can do better there. How would you think about just a random thought? The Let's look at the concept of email. If I send an email, I'm determining when you're going to get the email,
Hmm.
right? How interesting would it be if technology would know that you're a night owl and that you would usually start work, or that you're in your prime, no, that you're plowing through email every day at 2 a.m. because that works for you.
Yep.
How interesting would it be if I would send my email now, and I know it's still early over there, but you wouldn't receive it. You wouldn't receive it until 2 a.m. because the technology knows when you have your best moments in the flow. I think
Yep.
flow is the key word here. In your flow to do email. How do you think about that?
No, I think that's brilliant, and I'll take it one step further, and I'll say that, I mean, this is fairly easy to do. It's, hey, let's have, I'm going to use the old school word. Let's use a wizard whenever you set up your teams and say, well, we're going to do a personality assessment on you.
Mhm.
and just open up with that. It's part of the
Yeah.
configuration. It's personal. You could frame it under personalization of your team's and computing experience, and
Mhm.
you can volunteer that information to say, like, I already know. I don't need
Mhm.
an AI algorithm to tell me that I'm a night owl. I already know.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so, being able to do things like that, but also figure out the right methods of communication as well, because maybe email isn't the best form of communication for what you're
Mhm.
trying to do. So I think
Mhm.
that there's things from a proactive perspective that you could configure and personalize your experience. And then
Mhm.
two, for the more fluid and dynamic aspects of your life, have AI start to do pattern recognition on
Yep.
not the past week, maybe the past few months. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I notice that, and this isn't a true story, but let's say if we were out of the pandemic and we had a team happy hour, you know, you know, twice a month on Thursdays. And
Mhm.
so the algorithm looks back and says, "Oh, well, I'm noticing that Mike's not planning a whole lot Friday morning, for whatever reason, and he's booking a lot of busy time, admin time, etc."
Right.
And to go back and say, "Okay, well, if someone's trying to book a meeting and I'm going to suggest new times for that person, I'm not going to put Friday morning. I'm going to put
Exactly.
Monday or Tuesday or whatever it may be." So
Exactly.
I think that's brilliant.
I think we're super close to that, to be honest with you. What Outlook can already do, and this is going through Workplace Analytics and My Analytics,
Mhm.
is it can nudge you, right? So it can say, uh, I like to do email at night as well. I do it usually a little after 8, right? If I send the email, Outlook can say, Michel, are you aware that you're sending an email at 8 p.m. in the evening? Do you want to send it when the workday of the person that you're sending it to actually starts?
Right.
I think those are the first steps, right? I think that's yeah, and I liked what you're saying about AI. AI can have such a big impact on how we work as well. I've stopped managing my whole calendar.
Yeah.
I'm running everything through AI. So if I want to schedule a meeting with you, I'm sending you the email. I'm meeting with you. I'm sending you the email. I put Cortana on CC. There's a service that's currently in preview. It's called Scheduler, and I'm sending you the email Cortana CC, and I say, hey Cortana, can you help me schedule 25 minutes with Mike? And please add a Teams link. And if we would be able to meet in a room, please add a meeting room as well. What Cortana will do is it'll check your calendar, it'll check my calendar, even across time zones. She'll book the meeting for us whenever we're available, right? And then add the Teams link as well. And if we would be in the same office, she would schedule the office as well. And if I'm sending the email to somebody outside of my tenant, right? So outside of Microsoft, Cortana is actually sending an email to the other person saying, "Hey, I'm scheduling a meeting on behalf of Michel, and he can meet at these times. Do they work for you?" And if you say yes, the first date works for me, she'll schedule it. If you say no, I'd rather meet on the third Wednesday in November, she'll find a slot on the third Wednesday in November. That tool alone is saving me between, let's say, 45 and 75 minutes a week,
Yeah.
right? And that time is not going back into Microsoft.
Right.
It's all going back to what's most important to me, which is my family,
Yep.
right? So that's why I'm saying AI can have such a big impact, positive impact on our lives, where technology is really empowering you to achieve more on whatever aspect you want to achieve more in life.
Yeah, no, totally agree, and I use that service too. It's brilliant, and when
Yeah,
I forget to use it, because sometimes every once in a while I'll forget to use it, I kind of get in old school mode or whatever, and I
right.
kick myself. I'm like, damn it, Mike, why didn't why didn't I CC Cortana? What the hell's going
Yeah,
on here?
yeah.
Um, so we've mentioned quite a few innovations, from Together Mode, My Insights,
Hmm.
Headspace. And I know that we just had a big event, Ignite,
Yeah.
and there was some recent announcements. So we've mentioned a few of them, but I'm sure that there's some other announcements that got you excited. Yeah, what were those?
I like the new scenes in Together mode. So for those that haven't seen Together mode, you're being placed into it's kind of like a school environment
Hmm.
where you're only seeing the silhouette of the person, right? So you're still seeing the face, of course, but you're not seeing the whole image and everything that's happening behind it. So now, normally, if you would be on a video call with all these different small video images, it's super distracting. And it takes a lot of effort for the brain to do something with all those different images. So research is already showing that together mode is actually decreasing meeting fatigue because of this. And now soon we'll be able to add new scenes to together mode as well, where you can basically meet in a cafe or in a restaurant or outside and still be in this together mode. I think that's a cool one. What I like is breakout rooms. Obviously, that's one of the features that has been asked about a lot.
That's super
Where you
cool,
can,
by the way.
yeah, you can have your session and then break out in how many ever many different teams you want to. Up to you can create up to 50 breakout rooms. That's going to be released in October. What I like is custom layouts. So it allows a more dynamic content viewing experience. So you can enable presenters to really customize how content is showing for participants during the meeting. I think that's super interesting. Meeting recap is a big one as well.
Oh yeah.
And so after the meeting, what you can do in Teams is you can enable the recording and transcription. Soon you'll be able to do that separately as well. So you can make the decision to only do the transcription, not the video recording. But what you'll get after the meeting is you'll get a summary with the recording, the transcription, the meeting notes, and whatever decks were presented during the session. What I now do, and we're privileged to use this stuff a little bit earlier than our customers, I turn on transcription every single meeting that I'm on,
Yep.
right? So if I want to go back and read what was said, it's super easy to go through instead of having to go through the full meeting. The next step here, and our partners are already creating tools for this, is that you can go into a room, you can just have your meeting, and if I would say, okay, you know what, I'll grab that to do, and I'll fill out the Excel and have it done by next week. At the end of the meeting, this is a little more further ahead. At the end of the meeting, you'll see to do Michel,
Yep.
right? And then show the to do that you actually have. It's something that we just announced, where you can record a small portion of your voice so that Teams recognizes who has committed to a to do. We're currently using it for closed captioning and the transcription. So in the transcription, you can also see, oh, Mike said this, and then Michel said this. So I think meeting recaps is super interesting. What else? Being able to host webinars in Teams,
Yeah.
right? So you could already do the one-to-ones, you could do the meetings, you could do the live events. Soon you'll be able to do webinar registration and reporting
Mm.
all through Teams.
Let
So
me
that
ask
means
you.
if you are,
Let me ask you a
go ahead,
question on that.
sure,
One of the popular features, and actually the reason why people are seeing a Skype logo on the top right hand corner of your image is
right.
because Skype right now is the only Microsoft product that supports NDI.
Right.
With this conference mode, is it going to finally support NDI, or do you think that's a future potential
No, no,
future
no,
roadmap?
no, no. Exactly, it's already announced. So NDI is coming to Teams as well, and a bunch of other stuff around. Just trying to think what I can and can't say now. A bunch of other stuff around streaming high quality audio and video through Teams is something that's going to be very important going forward in the next months. I think so. I'm sure you'll see some more announcements on that. But NDI is definitely part of. It's just been announced for Teams.
Love it. Yeah, I can't wait
Yeah.
for that feature. Another thing that I found super helpful, and it's again, it's one of those tedious things that we would have to do more manually before, but things like workflow approvals are now being built into Teams as well, right?
Yep, and not just through Teams. You can connect it through any third party that you might use for approvals. So if you do use the Adobe service, excuse me, the Adobe service to get signatures, you can connect approvals. That's going to be a new app in Teams. You can connect approvals to the Adobe service, and it's really clicking the whole thing together. It's
Mm.
super easy. So I could say, okay, have to purchase a new monitor, whatever, and that has to be approved by my manager as part of the new work, homework equipment program, whatever. I can just say, okay, I want. We just got the email on this. I can say, okay, let's say Mike, you're my manager. I can say, okay, Mike has to approve this. I use the Adobe service. I click send and it's done, right? And that's how easy it is. The whole app and Teams platform development, I think, is super interesting. Also, if you look at the Power Platform.
Yeah.
So for those that are unaware, Power Platform is Power BI to get visuals of data. It's Power Virtual Agents where you can create chatbots even without having technical knowledge. You can create a full working chatbot with handover to real agents, by the way. The other one is Power Automate. You can create flows. So we can now say, if if Mike, if you would join my team now on Teams, you would automatically get a message saying, "Hey, Mike, welcome to the team. Here are the five most important resources to look into first. And hey, team, this is Mike. You just started in role such and such. Please make sure you go out and say hi."
Right.
Right? And if you would have your own office and we would be allowed to go back into the office, you can even say, "Go make sure that you say hi to Mike in room X, Y, and Z in building 1, 2, 3." Right? That's stuff that you can now automatically do. And then the last part of that is Power Apps, where
Yeah.
you can create your own apps, but low code, no code. So you don't need any real coding experience. Right? If you know a little bit about Excel and Excel formulas, you can create Power Apps. And now soon within Teams, you can just create your Power Apps from Teams and then create really strong, powerful line of business applications by just clicking all the stuff together.
Yeah, and low code, no code solutions. I mean, is getting a lot of focus right now. And whether that's citizen developers or data scientists or just in general.
Right?
The more we can kind of move up the stack, the better because it's less to maintain, more for Microsoft to maintain, but less for the actual customer to maintain, which is definitely helps us make this digital shift. As in this whole
Hmm.
acceleration process, at least what I'm seeing is that's also a catalyst to move to these new kind of paradigms of not only AI to automate a lot of this stuff, but
Hmm.
also to these low code, no code solutions as well. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yes, definitely. I think everybody can now be a developer. We have a really cool reference case on Heathrow Airport in London. They had somebody that was not technical at all. He got the assignment to find out what kind of applications were in Microsoft 365 or then Office 365, and he found Power Apps, and he created this real simple app where you can show information about the airport in the I think about 4 or 5 different languages. So it had English, it had Spanish, and I think French and something else, and Chinese, I believe.
Sure.
And they started using it in the airport, and the satisfaction of the travelers was going up. And now this guy leads the Power Apps department, and they've leveraged hundreds of different Power Apps within the airport. I think those scenarios are great to hear. Like I said, you don't need that many developers anymore to create nice line of business apps.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and that's a great example, and a lot of what we're talking about as well. I'm going to provide some links in the show notes so people can go check those out. Um,
Right.
Now, as we've been talking, what I really love about this conversation, Michelle, is we've not kind of just kept it in the technical world. We've said, look, there are both analog and digital solutions here to help us through this difficult time and to pave our way forward. I
Hmm.
like to say we're uh, analog beings trying to live in a digital world. I don't think that's ever going to go away until Elon Musk, wires us all up. But that aside, I think would be good for people to understand as well, just like with some of your life hacks, is also a little bit of retrospection. Michelle, as you kind of look back over the past 6 or so months, are there things that you wish that you would have done differently knowing what you know now?
No, and not for the reason that I think I figured it all out, because I definitely haven't. But it has been such an interesting journey.
Yeah.
I've come to know so much more about myself, which I think is very valuable. I've got to spend way more quality time with my family. I think that's an upside,
Yep.
right? And I've really seen how technology can impact people, right? So I definitely could have done things different and better, right? But then at the end of the day, I wouldn't change it because I've learned so much about me and about my family, and then in the workspace about my peers and the customers and all the cool stuff that we're seeing there. Um, I think there's still a lot of work to do for me as well as an individual, right? To become a better Microsoft employee, to become a better husband, better Microsoft employee. Uh, but I'm quite happy with the journey that I'm on as an individual in this crazy world that we're now living in. Yeah,
No, I think that's probably one of the best answers that I've heard, because it kind of goes back to kind of how I think about parenting, right? And you know, I want my kids to make mistakes. I want my
yeah,
kids to fail,
yeah,
because if they're not doing that, they're not learning, and
right,
that's the same goes for us.
yeah,
You know, and I think you make a really good point when you say, "Well, I wouldn't change anything." It's not because I hadn't done anything wrong.
right,
It was a journey for you, and so I think
right.
that was a really good way of framing and thinking about that.
And I think that takes a lot of time, right? So it took
Yeah.
me well into my 30s, right, to understand things about who I am and the values that I have as an individual, but then also how I think about other people in that space, right? So how much does the opinion of somebody else matter to me?
Right.
I've come to learn that if if after listening to the chat that you and I were having, and somebody would think, oh, this guy Michel, such an idiot, right? What is he talking about? He doesn't know what he's talking about. That's perfectly fine by me. And please send me that feedback if you think so.
Right.
Right? For me, it's almost like a gift,
Yeah.
and I make the decision whether or not I want to unpack that gift. Yes or no. Right? So if somebody thinks something of me, that's the vision of me through their own lens, and that is perfectly fine, right? As long as I always try my best, right? And work hard for me, and be honest and be fair. I think that's what's most important to me. And then obviously be the greatest dad and husband that I can be, and greatest individual that I can be, and then learn from all the mistakes that I might make in my life. I think we've all made plenty, right? The thing is,
Oh
how
yeah.
much do you learn from that and then implement into your life?
No, I think that was really beautifully said, and you know, lot of parables in there. But you know, I think one of the big things is, you know, as I think about this, is just being comfortable in your own skin takes
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
and
it does.
you know, a lot of trial and error, like you said, it took you to your 30s. You know, I don't know when I got comfortable or whatever, but you know, I definitely noticed there was a point in time where I was like, all feedback is great feedback. Of
Hmm.
course, I want to hear the positive stuff. Of course, everyone does. But
Hmm.
let's really start to switch that on what we get excited about and switch it to where can I improve? You know, what didn't land in the right ways? And so what I have built into my routine whenever I talk to whether it's customers or partners of any of the initiatives I'm working on or my
Hmm.
leadership team, I'll ask them directly. I want don't don't you know save the praise for another time. I want to hear about constructive criticism. I want to
Hmm.
hear about areas where I could have done something better,
Hmm.
or I kind of left you wanting more. And I find
Hmm.
that's extremely valuable because one, you're recognizing that you're a human being, you've got flaws, you know, you're not an expert in everything, and so that's going to help with your perception and uh, your essentially ability to collaborate with that
Yeah,
other party, but
yeah,
also this is invaluable feedback. it's all goodness. Like you said, it's like, oh, you're giving me free counseling, free advice on what I did wrong, and now it's the ball's in my court to go and
Exactly.
fix it.
Yeah. And then I can understand that's difficult for me. When I was younger, my ego just got in the way.
Yeah.
Right? So I would feel attacked and, oh, this is me, and I was doing my best, and ran on about it. It's not about me. It is, but it isn't, right? It's not about my ego. What really helped me, what was the eye opener for me, is a book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel
Oh yeah.
Ruiz. I'm sorry, I'm bad at names. So the four agreements are, be impeccable with your words, don't take anything personal, don't make assumptions, and then always do your best. Especially the be impeccable with your word. I think I always did it, but the don't take anything personal and don't make assumptions. Really thinking about that concept
Yep.
just changed my whole outlook on everything that had to do with life. And I'm doing better with it in the work environment than I'm doing in the personal space, to be honest with you. But it's such a, and it frees you up, right? So now I'm not afraid anymore to try new things, and really show that growth mindset, which we always talk about in Microsoft.
Yeah.
Try new things, which might fail, but that's perfectly fine. Then if people give you feedback, like I said, it's only a gift, and you can decide whether or not you want to unpack that gift or just throw it away.
Yeah, yeah, the there was two books that really changed my outlook. So very similar to you. One was Primal Leadership, and that the author Daniel Goldman, he was kind of the father of emotional intelligence,
Mm,
and really understanding in a material way that inside my brain, I may think that I'm communicating in a certain way.
hmm.
However, how people are interpreting what I'm saying,
Yes.
they're like,
Hmm.
wow, this guy is a real a-hole.
Yeah.
And really, I'm just like, hey, I just want a good product and I'm really passionate about this and I want us all to be successful. But the
Hmm.
audience is like, oh, I don't want to work with this guy. He's a
Yeah.
know it all and this and that. And so, I think that was critical in shifting kind of how the mental framework on how to think about
Hmm.
relationships and people and myself. And then
Hmm.
the second book, which I really like, and I actually take my teams through this as well, is The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. And that's, kind of a classic business book that kind of very much through real stories or a one real story goes through essentially implementing that whole emotional intelligence paradigm and what are the impacts, what really makes a successful team, what doesn't make a successful team. And at the beginning of the story, I think it was the CFO. He was the smartest, most successful guy in this startup, but
Hmm.
by the end of that story, he was no longer at the company because he
Right.
pissed everybody off. No one wanted
Yeah.
to work with him. And
Yep.
so there's an interesting exercise that I recommend folks do once we're out of this global pandemic is take a personality test. Well, let me take a step back. Bring your entire team together. Have them all in their own workspaces. Uh, Take a personality test, and whatever variety you want to take, whatever it is, go for it. But have everyone do it. Have them not tell anybody what the result came out to be. Then, have everyone come together. Have them put a piece of paper on their back, and now as they're walking around, someone with a pen will go and either put you in a quadrant or pick a color for you or name the
Hmm.
personality profile, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
But what you'll find 9 times out of 10, and every single time I've done this, I found this to be the case, is that whatever your internal backup or primary, whatever methodology you use, whatever term they use for that,
Hmm.
whatever you internalize your personality to be, it's
Hmm.
universally people outside of your brain don't think you're that personality profile. They think you're some other
That's
personality
interesting.
profile. It's a
I like that.
fascinating, eye-opening kind of test.
I like that. I
So,
like that. Don't you think that that's what I'm really hoping that technology will establish, is that we can focus more on EQ instead of IQ.
yep,
Right? And that's what I'm hoping for my children as well. Right? So my children are in the range of 4 and 13. Right? But if I look at the time that's spent on EQ, versus the IQ part. I wish we would spend more time on EQ. So I'm hoping that technology will actually be an enabler for that part, where also the school system will spend a lot more time. That's a whole different talk in itself, I think.
Yes.
Spend more time on helping children to create that emotional human being, human to human connection piece, which I think will be even more important in the future than how smart you are or what kind of school you finished.
I'll tell you what, we both have kids. We're both passionate about our families and, raising happy and healthy families. Sometime soon we should do a dedicated episode where we actually talk about that and some of the great things that actually that I've read that are coming out of the Netherlands and, you know, places like Japan where, they have kids walking through forests and
Hmm,
things along those lines. In the
hmm,
United States, there's some things that are being done that's innovative. In emerging markets, there's a ton of really cool stuff that is being innovative in the education system. But we should
hmm.
definitely do that on another episode because I'm sure that will be a lengthy conversation. But
Super interesting.
Michel, I want to thank you for your time. I know that you're a busy guy, and I do appreciate you coming on and talking with us. Now, if folks want to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
Easiest way is LinkedIn,
Okay.
right? So find me on. I'm sure you have my name somewhere. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. Um, if you ever want to reach out, please feel free to do so. Again, I like to have the hands-on mentality. So if I can help, please send me a message. Feel free to connect. I'm sharing a bunch of stuff on, especially Teams, modern work stuff, and then also these small life hacks. So I think that's the place to find me. And thanks so much for having me on your show. I think it's podcast is such a great way to get in touch with new audiences. So thanks again for having me, and yeah, maybe we should do a LinkedIn Live on my account one of these days.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.